The Scarlet Letter. The Scarlet Letter is a novel by Nathaniel Hawthorne, published in 1850. It tells the story of Hester Prynne, a young woman who commits adultery in Puritan New England and has to bear the consequences of her sin. The novel opens with a prologue in which the narrator explains how he found a manuscript and the red letter A among some old documents. He decides to write a fictional account of the events described in the manuscript. The main story starts in Boston, in the 17th century. Hester Prynne is led out of the prison with her infant daughter Pearl in her arms and a scarlet letter A on her chest. She has been convicted of adultery and sentenced to wear the letter for the rest of her life. A crowd of Puritans watches her with scorn and curiosity. Among them is an elderly man who recognizes Hester as his wife. He has been missing for 2 years and was presumed dead. He calls himself Roger Chillingworth and vows to find out the identity of Hester's lover. Hester is taken to the scaffold, where she is interrogated by the town's ministers, especially Arthur Dimmesdale, a young and eloquent preacher. Hester refuses to name her partner in sin, despite Dimmesdale's plea. She sees Chillingworth in the crowd and feels a chill of fear. He makes a gesture to keep her silent. Hester is returned to the prison, where she suffers from anxiety and dread. Chillingworth visits her as a physician and gives her a potion to calm her nerves. He also asks her to keep his true identity a secret and promises not to harm her or her child. He says he only wants revenge on the man who wronged him. Hester agrees, but warns him that his vengeance will destroy his soul. The next day, Hester is released from prison and moves to a small cottage on the outskirts of town, near the forest. She earns a living as a seamstress, making garments for the rich and poor alike. She also embroiders the scarlet letter with gold thread, making it more conspicuous and artistic. She is shunned by society, but she bears her isolation with dignity and grace. She devotes herself to charity and good deeds, hoping to atone for her sin. Pearl grows up to be a beautiful but wild and unruly child. She is fascinated by the scarlet letter and often asks Hester about its meaning. Hester avoids answering her questions but tells her that it is the mark of the black man, a symbol of evil. Pearl also shows an uncanny affinity for nature and animals and seems to have supernatural insight. She is especially drawn to Dimmesdale, whom she often sees clutching his chest in pain. Chillingworth becomes Dimmesdale's physician and friend, pretending to care for his health. In reality, he suspects that Dimmesdale is Hester's lover and torments him with subtle hints and questions. He also discovers a mark on Dimmesdale's chest, which confirms his suspicion. He intensifies his efforts to make Dimmesdale suffer from guilt and remorse. Dimmesdale is a respected and beloved minister, but he feels unworthy of his position and reputation. He is haunted by his secret sin and by Chillingworth's malice. He tries various ways to punish himself, such as fasting, whipping, and vigils, but he finds no relief. He also longs to confess his sin publicly, but he lacks the courage to do so. One night, Dimmesdale goes to the scaffold where Hester stood 3 years ago. He hopes to find some peace by standing there alone in the dark. He cries out in agony, attracting the attention of some townspeople. Among them are Hester and Pearl, who are returning from visiting a sick person. They join Dimmesdale on the scaffold, and he feels a moment of comfort from their presence. He asks Hester to reveal Chillingworth's true identity, but she refuses. He also asks Pearl to kiss him, but she refuses too, saying that he has not acknowledged her as his daughter. A meteor flashes across the sky, forming a giant letter A. The townspeople interpret it as a sign of God's approval for their governor, who has just died. Dimmesdale sees it as a sign of his own guilt. He also sees Chillingworth watching them from below with a fiendish grin. The next day, Dimmesdale delivers an impressive sermon to the crowd gathered for the governor's funeral. He is praised as a saintly and inspiring leader. However, he feels more miserable than ever, knowing that he is a hypocrite and a sinner. Hester decides to flee with Dimmesdale and Pearl to Europe, where they can start a new life together. She arranges for a passage on a ship that is leaving in 4 days. She meets Dimmesdale in the forest and tells him about her plan. She also tells him the truth about Chillingworth. Dimmesdale is shocked and angry, but he forgives Hester. He agrees to escape with her and Pearl, and feels a surge of hope and joy. He also throws away his self-imposed restraints and embraces Hester passionately. He asks her to remove the Scarlet Letter, but she hesitates, saying that it has become a part of her.
He then asks Pearl to come to him, but she runs away as if she does not recognize him. Hester and Dimmesdale walk back to the town, feeling free and happy. They encounter several people on their way, who seem to act strangely or say odd things to them. They wonder if they have changed so much that they have become alien to their own world. Hester learns that Chillingworth has discovered their plan and has booked a passage on the same ship as them. She is alarmed, but she hopes that he will not be able to harm them once they are away from Boston. Dimmesdale returns to his home, where he finds Chillingworth waiting for him. Chillingworth offers him some medicine, but Dimmesdale refuses it, saying that he does not need it anymore. He also writes a new sermon for Election Day, which is the day of his departure with Hester and Pearl. On Election Day, Dimmesdale delivers his final sermon, which is even more powerful and moving than his previous one. He is hailed as a prophet and a miracle worker by the people. He then walks towards the scaffold, where Hester and Pearl are waiting for him. He asks them to join him on the platform, where he intends to make his confession before leaving with them. Dimmesdale confesses that he is the father of Pearl and the partner of Hester in adultery. He exposes his chest, where there is a scarlet letter A engraved on his flesh. He says that he has been punished by God and by Chillingworth for his sin. He asks God and the people for forgiveness. He then dies in Hester's arms, saying that God has granted him mercy at last. Chillingworth is enraged by Dimmesdale's confession, as it deprives him of his revenge. He dies soon after, leaving a large inheritance to Pearl. Hester and Pearl leave Boston and go to England, where they live for several years. Pearl grows up to be a beautiful and wealthy woman, who marries a nobleman and has children of her own. She keeps in touch with Hester through letters. Hester returns to Boston after many years, wearing the Scarlet Letter again. She resumes her charitable work and becomes a respected figure among the women of the town. She also receives occasional visits from Pearl and her grandchildren. She dies peacefully and is buried next to Dimmesdale, sharing a tombstone with him that bears the letter A.